Got a guest
Nice. It is working, so we are technically live on there.
on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta I'll retweet that. Tried to
Twitter
charge my phone,
Live.
so we have some battery.
Alrighty. That makes it easy. You don't even gotta like.
Roman Anthony was scratched today. That's
Who's Roman
that's not
Anthony?
nothing. He's like a top 10 prospect for the Red Sox center fielder.
Flaherty.
For for Roman Anthony,
I mean, a part
uh,
of the deal.
I mean that would be more Scooble level. Roman Anthony's really good.
Have you seen the prices going around?
I have.
Everyone's
Mark
gonna.
Leiter Jr. is the only one who didn't go for anything.
My note I put down
Uh,
on Mark Leiter Jr. Was the two non-prospect return.
all right.
It's
Let's
it's
let's go ahead and
fine,
start
you
this
know.
real quick.
Yeah, fire it up.
We'll jump to all that. All right. Well, welcome in everyone to this episode slash live stream of the Batflip podcast. We are a little under an hour away from the trade deadline as we are here right now. So I think we have in here 30 plus trades that have already happened that we're going to at least mention. We're not going to go in depth about all of these. We'll just mention some of them that happened. But it's been an eventful past few days. I mean, it really started firing up, what, Friday? I think is
Yeah,
when it really Thursday night into Friday was when it really started. But before we get in all that, David, how are you doing this week?
I'm I'm doing good. It's been a busy work week too. It's kind of a we would have probably started a little bit earlier, but I had to work. So, um, just the 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 Cubs have made some very surprising moves. I'm very excited to get into this because I think I was a little happier until today so far, but and the day's not over yet. We still got some time. So, very fun little trade deadline to this point. How are you guys doing? Both your teams have been involved in some pretty major stuff. So, Matt, how are you doing this week?
I've been pretty good. Just not a ton going on. Trade deadline's gotten really interesting over the last couple days. And I've been watching the Olympics a little bit. That's been interesting. So yeah, everything's been pretty good. How about you, Damien?
It's been good. I mean, like you guys mentioned, it's been a busy week over here, trying to make sure we have everything in line for today. And LA's made a couple moves. They've been in on some other stuff, so we'll see if that happens before the deadline here. But it's been a fun week outside of the bullpen just melting down a couple times against the Astros, but you expect that a little bit. But let's not waste too much time because we got plenty of deals to talk about, and there'll be plenty of deals rolling in as we go through this. So, um, let's kind of start with the deal that kind of kicked this all off late Thursday night, which was the Diamondbacks and Marlins getting together on the deal to see AJ Puck go to the Diamondbacks, and the Marlins get a couple prospects. One is outfielder Andrew Pintar, and the other one is Davison De Los Santos.
Yeah, I guess I could start with AJ Puck. This is a guy who was a former top prospect, came up with the A's, got traded to the Marlins. I think was that in the Marte trade,
Which one?
the one where Puck got sent to the Marlins. Was that the
Was it?
start
It
of
was
the Marte?
Blade, I think.
Blade, that's right.
Yeah,
It was Blade, which has turned out to be an interesting trade since Blade's been pretty good this year. But AJ Puck, he's a guy who's been a pretty high walk, high strikeout guy at times, and he's been a really good reliever though. He's got a 195 ERA in the bullpen this year after a 922 ERA when they kind of inexplicably tried him as a starter.
yeah.
And he's got pretty major splits, right and left-handed batters. So definitely a good pickup there. He's got 2.5 years of control left as well, which is a very nice thing to have. David, do you have anything on the return there?
Yeah, Davison De Los Santos is really interesting. The Marlins actually did not, or rather, the Diamondbacks left him unprotected for the Rule 5 draft. He got drafted by Cleveland and then got returned. So they already lost him, but he has absolutely shredded AAA this year. And the question at this point is, can he replicate that success at the major league level? He looks like a really good hitter. The question, of course, is that major league step from AAA to the majors. Is he more than just that kind of quad A player that can barely reach replacement level, that just kills minor league pitching because he's a better hitter than that level? I think it's a great gamble for the Marlins because Puck's value is peak right now. Like, he really looks like a very clear back end of the bullpen reliever. De Los Santos has, all 6 years of control. He's the type of hitter that potentially could anchor your lineup for a few years here. So, I like the deal from the Marlins side here. I like Davison De Los Santos. I was kind of hoping the Cubs could swing him back before we kind of realized they were going to be sellers. So, good prospect. The Marlins. You'll see a theme here. Peter Bendix and the Marlins. They're killing this deadline.
Yeah, I thought this was a pretty fair trade with the return. I agree with you on De Los Santos. He's actually the new Marlins number 12 prospect, but that farm system is extremely weak. So there is some upside there with him, though.
De Los Santos's prospect status is it's on the rise. He's not going to be ranked right now.
He's been compared a lot to like Jake Berger, who's currently a Marlin.
Yeah, that's a decent comp. Yeah.
And then they also got Andrew Pintar, who's the Marlins' new number 23 prospect. So this is kind of what I would expect, a really good reliever who has some control left to go for. A couple of guys who are legitimate prospects, but maybe aren't like super high-end prospects. But as we'll talk about here in a little bit, this ended up. I don't love this trade for Miami because of what the return's been for other relievers. I feel like this return they got is a little bit weaker than some that's been given for like Tanner Scott, who is a better reliever than AJ Puck, but not by this much difference. So we'll see how this turns out. But definitely. I mean, in a vacuum, that's a really solid move in my opinion. It's just the way that the deadline's been so far.
Yeah. So before we move on, we got a classic boob tweet.
There we go.
Right here. He said 1 hour remains until the trade deadline of the 2 games' biggest starters still on the market. Garrett Crochet of the Chicago White Sox and Jack Flaherty of the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Dodgers continue to be engaged.
Beautiful.
If that's not a prime Bob Nightingale tweet, I don't know what is. But
he's so back.
Yeah, he's so back. But that's the thing. We will continue to update this as we happen, but as it happens. But I just couldn't pass that up. That was too funny. So let's move on to the next one, which happened. I think it was like late Thursday night into Friday morning. And we'll try and bang through these really fast as we can. It's the Seattle Mariners. They kicked off their quote unquote rebuild or sell off or whatever you want to call it by trading Randy Rosarena to the Seattle Mariners. And they got outfielder Aiden Smith, right-handed pitcher Brody Hopkins, who people are super, super high on, and then a player to be named later as well. So, David, what did you think about the Randy deal?
Yeah, Randy being the first Ray to go was a little bit interesting because that felt very contract-based. Rays are kind of trying to reload. They're doing their Rays thing, right? That's a team that has underperformed. It isn't as good as we kind of expected it to be at the beginning of the year, and they're right at 500. Like, they're theoretically still in the playoff race, but we're going to talk more about the Rays. Don't worry. Randy's a good player, obviously playoff pedigree, but he was not playing well this year. His value was a little bit depressed. This is a little bit selling Randy at a lower level than if they had maybe traded him like in the offseason, which I think was rumored. So, they held on to him. They tried to play him this season. It hasn't really worked. And selling Randy now, I mean, it was him versus Yandy Diaz, I think. And Yandy still may go here in the last hour, but it feels like selling low on Randy, but like you said, I mean, these prospects from Seattle are interesting, but I think it's a lot less than what would have happened if maybe they had sold him before the season started. This is a little bit of a tough deal for Rays fans, especially who are big fans of Randy Arozarena.
Yeah, I'm with you on Arozarena. I do think like he's had a rough start. He had a really bad like month and a half to start the season. He's actually rebounded pretty well so far. He's up to a 113 WRC plus, and I mean his plate discipline's been a lot improved over the last couple years. He's one of those guys that came up. We thought he was going to be this free swinging power hitter, and he's really gotten to become a more well-rounded hitter. And he's just ran a really low batting average on balls in play this year, only a 258 batting average on balls in play. Now you still have the weak defense with him, which I mean he's got pretty good speed. You would think his defense would be a little bit better. In fact, with Arozarena, I think I compare his career so far to like Marlins Marcell Ozuna, where it's like he comes up as a speedy outfielder who shows flashes of being a good defender, has this just hits the ball really hard, but as it time kind of goes by, he's more of a DH corner outfielder than DH who is a who is really streaky. So I think that's kind of who Arozarena is. And then the return they got was pretty weak, I thought. Brody Hopkins is a big, kind of got a big fastball slider, but he doesn't throw many strikes. He's their new number 8 prospect, which is a pretty good deal for being in the Rays organization. That's a solid prospect. And then Aiden Smith is the new number 29 prospect for the Rays. He's performed pretty well. He's got a little bit of a hit tool risk, but I thought the return, especially when you start comparing him to other guys who have been moved, like the return I thought was pretty minimal, but still, good on the Mariners on making a move there, getting somebody that they like and has the potential to be really good for them. And, and the Rays, anytime the Rays acquire prospects, it's like you kind of give them the benefit of the doubt at this point. So I'm not going to complain about the return they got.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people really like Brody Hopkins and his potential there. So that's definitely one to watch. And like we said, the Rays they're one of the best talent evaluating teams. So if they see something, they'll take advantage of it. So the next one is just a really super short one. It was James Paxton who had been DFA'd from the Dodgers. He got traded back to the Red Sox after breaking. Brian De La Cruz goes to the Pirates. Interesting.
That one was coming for a while. That one's been rumored.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Well, he has 18 homers this year. Did y'all know that?
Yeah,
Brian De La Cruz is actually killing it.
He hits the ball really hard. He's one of those guys that's like low on base, streaky power. Like he's a solid player though, and he's got a lot of control left too. That's a pretty good move for the Pirates, who are kind of opening their window and they need offense.
Yeah. We'll talk more about that as we get down there. But LA got a DSL 17-year-old lottery ticket type guy. Just nothing big there.
Yeah, Paxton was, people were going crazy about him getting DFA'd with a 4.4 ERA, but his peripheral was terrible. So
well, they were looking. They're like he's 8-2.
Someone is good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they were like he's 8-2, but it's like he has like a 17 FIP too.
Yeah.
So I would consider the next one we had to be kind of the first big like real interesting deal, because it was the first deal where we saw MLB players for MLB players, and that was between the Orioles and the Phillies. We knew the Phillies had been looking for some outfield. The Orioles had been looking for some pitching, preferably go in the bullpen. So the Orioles used their excess of outfielders and traded one to the Phillies in Austin Hayes. And they got a bullpen piece in Seranthony Dominguez to go right into that back end. And then they also got outfielder Christian Pache, who they're going to use as a kind of fourth outfielder type late innings speed guy off the bench.
Yeah, I mean, Austin Hayes is a guy who's got a pretty solid track record of being a league average, like basically a 2-win league average player. He's a fine hitter, a fine defender, a fine base runner. And he's been a little bit rough at the plate this year. He's been not as good as he has been in the past. He's only got 0.1 WAR. So he's kind of one of those like not as good as he has been guys, and he's got a year and a half of control left. And then Dominguez has really struggled with homers this year. 1.4 homers per 9, and that's been a problem.
Yeah, Hayes hit 16 homers 2 years in a row. He's been able to play center field, but kind of at a league average to slightly below league average level. But so he'll kind of rotate in against lefties. He's kind of be a strict platoon guy, I think, for the Phillies. He'll rotate in where Brandon Marsh can maybe sit. Just a good defensive replacement in the corners probably to come in late in the games for like Nick Castellanos or Schwarber, whoever's playing left field that day. So I think Hayes is a pretty reasonable grab for a team that does not have very many holes right now in the Phillies. And the Orioles, they need more pitching, right? Dominguez is not going to be tasked with holding games late in the leads late in the game. He's going to be pitching the 5th, 6th inning of games that are already somewhat out of hand, I think. So the homer issue may not be a big deal, but having a guy with velocity with some upside, and a guy who's been pretty good for the Phillies over the last couple of seasons in Dominguez, that's a good get for the Orioles, especially for Austin Hayes, who's been struggling, like we said.
Yeah, and then it gives them a guy who, Kimbrel's been kind of shaky, but they're also missing Bautista this year. The Orioles are, so that gives them another late inning guy.
I think Yennier Cano's struggling too.
He has been a little bit.
Yeah.
So then we had Jerry Dipoto just doing Jerry Dipoto things, making another trade there, acquiring relief pitcher Yimi Garcia from the Toronto Blue Jays for outfielder Jonathan Clase and catcher Jacob Sharp. Garcia is, 33 years old. He's a solid relief pitcher. Has kind of got better over the last couple of years as he's aged a little bit more, which is something you don't see much. I remember when he was with the Dodgers, he would just get lit up all the time. But he's actually turned into a really good relief pitcher now. Giving up Clase, I think, is probably a big, it hurts a little bit for a rental relief pitcher arm. But I don't know. What do you think, Matt?
Yimi Garcia is an elite reliever, though. He's got a 2.53 ERA, and the peripherals are all backing it up this year. So Jonathan Clase is an interesting guy. He's got an 80 grade speed tool. I think he stole like 60 something bases a couple years ago in the minors. He's got a little bit of a question mark with his hit tool and stuff, but the plate discipline can be good. He can get on base some. So he's definitely a prospect. He did make his major league debut as well. And then they got an organizational depth catcher in that deal. But I think it's pretty fair. I mean, Yimi Garcia has been, a really good reliever, and he's going to help the Mariners a ton the rest of this season, even though he is a rental. So it'll be interesting. And the reason I was laughing a minute ago, I saw the Bob Nightingale tweet about the will the last person in Miami turn off the lights?
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of funny, but
yeah. It's like Craig Mish earlier who said that the Marlins traded 5 players off their 26-man roster, so he might have to grab his glove.
Yeah, I like Craig.
And that was
he's really good.
That was before the De La Cruz one.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so the next one we had is we're going back to the Orioles again and back to the Rays. And that was that the Rays traded right-handed pitcher Zach Eflin to the Baltimore Orioles and $1 million for his trade assignment money there. And the Rays get infielder Matt Horvath, right-handed pitcher Jackson Baumeister, and outfielder Matthew Etzel. Eflin's already started a game for Baltimore there. I think they won yesterday in that game. But David, what do you think about Eflin going to Baltimore?
Yeah, this was a pretty decent little package for Eflin. When talking about Rays trade or Orioles tradable prospects, Baumeister was one of the guys that everybody had their eye on, I think, and he's got a lot of upside. Very young guy who's really far away. For Eflin, I think this is a really good use of the prospect capital for the Orioles. Baumeister has a big ceiling. He's got a big risk, big floor, but you turn that around into a guy like Zach Eflin, who's definitely a playoff caliber starter. He slots in nicely right behind Corbin Burns and Grayson Rodriguez in your rotation. This is a really solid deal. I don't think the Orioles make some additional moves here, I think today that we'll get to that are a little more questionable, but this one is rock solid. And Zach Eflin, I mean, he wasn't quite as good as he was last year. I think he was my pick for Dark Horse Cy Young in the AL. He hasn't been that good, but this is still a good addition to the Orioles staff that has lost 3 guys to elbow injuries this season. So I expect Zach Eflin to pitch in the playoffs here in a few months.
Yeah, Zach Eflin. I do like this deal for the Orioles. One of the things that made it a really good deal for them is they are willing to take on the cash. From the rest of the money owed to Eflin. I think that was a big reason the Rays wanted to trade him, was because he's owed he's owed $18 million. He's got a $17.2 million hit next year to the luxury tax. Which of course I don't think the Rays care about that because they're not going to be anywhere close to it. But anyways, he's owed about $18 million next year. So that's the O's taking on some money, saying, well, we don't want to give up our prospects, but it's basically like signing a free agent mid season, and they did have to give up a couple guys because that contract, Eflin's been so good, that contract does have some surplus value, even though it is a pretty good bit of money. Matt Horvath is a solid toolsy type guy. I think he's infielder. And then Jackson Baumeister. I mean, and Matt Horvath is totally blocked by with the
Oh,
Orioles
yeah.
as well. I mean, there's so many good infielders like him. And then Jackson Baumeister is one of those like interesting, has 3 pitches that are good, but he doesn't throw strikes. And if he ever figures it out, he might soar up lists. So it's one of those Rays lottery tickets that if some of them will hit, some of them won't. And it's definitely a prospect that you don't feel terrible about parting with, because there's a good chance he ends up not even making the big leagues.
Right.
Oh, and then Etzel is like a non-prospect that's
Yeah.
performed okay in the minors. I mean, he's not really anything.
Yeah, Baumeister is the big haul in this deal, but
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Matt said, very much a questionable piece that wasn't going to impact the Orioles in the next 2 or 3 years, and that's their time. This is go time for the Baltimore Orioles.
For sure. So a part of getting the Yimi Garcia trade, probably should have put this one up a little bit. The Mets or the Mariners then traded Ryan Stanek to the Mets for an outfielder, Ryland Thomas. Not a big thing, just kind of switching Yimi for Stanek there. So then let's jump to the next deal, and that was Friday. So this is on to Saturday. The first deal we had on Saturday was the Cubs and Blue Jays getting together on a deal for relief pitcher Nate Pearson. The Blue Jays got infielder Josh Rivera, and then I'm going to butcher this name, so David, you can have it.
It is Yohendrick Pinago.
There you go.
And Yohendrick Pinago played in high A ball 4 seasons in a row. He just got promoted this year to Double A, and now he's gone. So this is Rivera and Pinago are total lottery ticket guys with a couple good skills, but not great skills. They drafted Rivera out of Florida last year in the 3rd round. We actually talked about Rivera in our pre-draft show with Greg Zumack. He was one of Greg's guys last year, and he's not performing super well at Double A, but he did just jump straight into Double A. So I think he's at the very least somewhat competent at shortstop with potential in the bat, but he'll be much better served in an organization where the shortstop is leaving potentially after next year. They don't really have a second baseman. So for the Blue Jays, this is a very, very strong return for a guy like Nate Pearson, who struggled mightily out of their bullpen over the last couple of seasons. And for the Cubs, it's a shot in the dark with a guy that, definitely has fastball velocity, but has not been able to, get that shape where it doesn't give up home runs. And, yesterday he pitched 1 inning. It was
not great.
It was the first inning was good. He came out for a 2nd inning and gave up a bomb and then hit someone in the helmet and got ejected. So it's already been an adventure for Nate Pearson. And I think the goal for the Cubs is definitely not this season, right? He's going to go in the lab. They're going to change stuff this offseason. He's just a body right now. But this offseason they might make some adjustments, and I think there could be some. They'll go after the upside of Nate Pearson, but it's a kind of a nothing. They didn't lose anything by way of prospects. The Blue Jays gain a guy you can probably make the majors in Josh Rivera. Pinago, like I said, he's repeated A ball like 4 times. I don't know what he'll be. He's got a good hit tool, but can he play the outfield? Can he rise? Make some adjustments and actually get to some power? I don't know. And he hasn't yet, so I don't feel bad about losing either of these guys, and I love taking the gamble on Nate Pearson.
Yeah, Pearson. It's going to be interesting because about a week before the deadline, he had said again that his motive was to want to start again. So it will be interesting to see if maybe going into the offseason, that's something the Cubs might try and work with him into spring training. At least stretch him out, see what you got, and maybe he surprises you. If not, I mean, the worst is you get a electric bullpen arm. If you can harness a little bit more there. So let's jump over to the next deal, which is a deal we kind of hinted at and really talked about before we talked to Greg last week. And that is that the Yankees acquired Jazz Chisholm from the Miami Marlins for right-handed pitcher Bradley Blakelock and right-handed pitcher Yunier Herrera. I don't even. Oh no, sorry, wrong one. I'm on the complete wrong one. Anyways, it's Jazz for catcher Agustin Ramirez.
There it is.
Infielder Jared Cerna and infielder Abraham Ramirez. I'm on the next trade down. You know what? Whatever. But anyways, Jazz to the Yankees. I mean, in his first game, already hit 2 homers. Right? Yeah. Like that's what we expect. Right?
Yeah. The thing with Jazz this year, and Jazz is a guy who has dealt with some injuries. You got something coming in, Damian?
Yeah, Pirates acquire IKF from the Blue Jays.
Interesting.
I think the Pirates have bought Brian De La Cruz and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. I'm not entirely sure that they're that much better now than they were like an hour ago.
Hey,
Got a lot
They've
more
got some
initials.
different players, I guess.
Got a lot more initials.
let Ben cook. Anyway, back to the Jazz deal.
But yeah, with Jazz Chisholm, it's the guy. He's dealt with his injuries in the past. They moved him to center field to try to get him out of the infield and try to help with the injuries, and it just hasn't really worked out that well. He's still been a pretty decent center fielder when he's been out there, but they've played him at second a little bit recently, which is to increase his versatility. So this is kind of perfect for the Yankees. He's been an above average hitter still. He's actually got the best walk and strikeout rates of his career this year. So he's definitely going to be a little bit of a platoon type guy. His splits are pretty significant, but you can throw him out there at second base on days you're facing a really tough righty that you might not want Gleyber Torres facing. You can throw him out there in the outfield. There's a lot of different options here, and it just adds a good bat to the Yankees, who just don't have any depth in their lineup behind Judge and Soto, and maybe Stanton if he gets healthy. So it's definitely a big get for the Yankees, and the prospect capital they gave up was pretty significant. Augustin Ramirez is pretty good. He's a guy that he's the number 72 overall prospect on Fangraphs. He's a power hitting catcher who probably ends up as a first base or DH most of the time. Probably still catch a little bit. Maybe think Gary Sanchez type. Jared Serna is their number 5 now. He could play shortstop, and he's just kind of a solid prospect across the board. And then they've got a Abraham Ramirez, who's kind of a lottery ticket, who just made his U.S. debut in that one. So pretty fair trade.
Yeah. Okay, so let's jump to the next one, which was the Brewers acquiring relief pitcher Nick Mears from the Rockies, and then you guys heard the other two is Bradley Blaiblock and Yunior Herrera. Just Rockies had to trade somebody that didn't make any sense to trade instead of the people that do make sense to trade. It's a perfect summary of anything to do with the Rockies. Brewers, you get a relief pitcher that goes in there. They got Devin Williams back, but Trevor McGill just had to go to the IL again, so we'll see there. But Mears has looked good in his 1 or 2 outings there with Milwaukee so far. So then we have the Red Sox and Blue Jays, another interdivision trade, which is kind of weird that we saw a couple of those so far. But the Red Sox got catcher Danny Jansen from the Blue Jays for infielder Cutter Coffee, infielder Edison Paulino, and then right-handed pitcher Gilberto Bautista. So what does Jansen bring to the Red Sox outside of a Jansen and Jansen battery, David?
That'll be fun. Danny Jansen's been a pretty solid catcher for the Blue Jays for a couple of years now. Been a trade candidate over the course of that time because they've seen Alejandro Kirk come up, and they've had other catchers come and go in that time as well. But he's a free agent at the end of this season. The Blue Jays have very clearly indicated they are selling the rental pieces. They are keeping the controlled guys like Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. This is just following in those footsteps. And I mean, Jansen's probably going to help, right? Connor Wong's the current regular starter for the Red Sox. He's gonna, Danny Jansen's gonna be a better hitter than that. And I think they'll probably split time. Danny Jansen might get to DH for the Red Sox a little bit, but I imagine they just go 50-50 with he and Connor Wong rest of the way, keep them both fresh. And, I think Cutter Coffee being a prospect name, that's the big news here, because that is awesome.
Right.
Yeah. I just want to add with Danny Jansen, he's a rental, and I'm with you, David, on the split there. But I think there's a chance that Wong ends up playing like maybe DHing some too. He's been really good at the plate this year. He's got a 125 WRC plus, and his defense has been a problem. And Jansen's he's actually been a pretty good bit better than Jansen this year. But now their historical normals are not that way. But if Wong could stay hot, you might be able to throw him out there as a DH occasionally, that kind of thing. And then the prospects were the number 25 and number 24 prospect now for the Jays. So that's not that much of a, they're kind of maybe a utility type guys. So, and then a young complex league pitcher. So it's really not a huge return. It makes sense. And Reese McGuire was recently DFA'd. So, they needed a backup or a second catcher. I guess it's kind of a 1-to-1 split. So
So then let's jump over to the Phillies and Angels trade, which I feel like this is probably the first one where we're like, holy crap, this market is it's booming right now. And that was that the Phillies got closer Carlos Estevez from the Angels for left-handed pitcher Samuel Aldahiri and right-handed pitcher George Klassen.
yeah, Carlos Estevez is a really solid pitcher. He's been pretty excellent this year. The Phillies still have a little bit of a concern with their bullpen. It's in the back end. Alvarado's still been really good this year, but he hasn't been quite the same as he was last year. And I don't know if you fully trust him and Jeff Hoffman to shut down postseason games, but Estevez has been good enough to where you almost feel pretty good about him in the postseason. I mean, I think he's had some homer luck this year, but that could turn around a little bit. But he's been really, really good. So and he's got a pretty good track record over the last three years. So I think it's a pretty good pickup for the Phillies.
Yeah, and George Klassen, I think, it's maybe my favorite guy of the two. Klassen's a guy he came from Minnesota, right? 6th round draft pick last year. Not a huge pedigree type of player, but he comes in with a pretty good fastball, and he's shown the ability to start this year where he's getting some pretty solid results. He's getting a lot of whiffs at single A. Right now he's up at high A. He got promoted. He dominated low A. So the natural progression for a guy like this is that he's got the potential to come in and make that ascension of reliable starter with a lot of whiff, and with that floor of being able to be a late inning reliever because he's got such a good fastball. So I think Klassen's the kind of guy that it's surprising to see him move for a rental reliever in Carlos Estevez.
Yeah, Klassen on Fangraphs is now the number 2 prospect for the Angels.
Yeah,
which is pretty remarkable in the way that not because that's a super insanely good prospect. It's because like this guy got traded for a reliever who's not like the best reliever in baseball or anything, and he's their second best prospect now. It shows how bad the Angels farm system has gotten, but definitely a pretty good lottery ticket there because if he's able to continue to develop the command and start, then this guy has some really good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So another kind of just depth trade that we had happen was the Mets and Nationals. Mets acquiring Jesse Winker from the Nationals for right-handed pitcher Tyler Stewart. Just another kind of 4th outfielder depth piece. Mets might catch a lightning in the bottle there.
I mean, Winker's got a 130 WRC plus this year. He has not been bad.
I just don't think he's going to play every day. He's going to be their 4th outfielder.
He won't play against lefties.
Yeah.
They needed a platoon guy, and he's also got a 375 on base percentage, which that's always kind of been his thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But they gonna get a good on base guy.
Yeah. So then let's jump to the next one, which was Saturday morning between the Padres and the Rays, or was it Sunday morning? Sunday morning. Which was the Padres got relief pitcher Jason Adam from the Rays, and the Rays acquired a package of right-handed pitcher Dylan Lesko, outfielder Homer Bush Jr., and infielder J.D. Gonzalez. Lesko I've been really, really high on Lesko for a long time, all the way from his high school days, but trading him for Jason Adam, I don't know about that. This seems like an A.J. Preller masterclass to me. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, Jason Adam is a really, really good reliever. He's got a 2.49 ERA this year. Last year he had a sub-3, and in 2022 he had a 1.56 ERA. But he's got the peripherals are still really, really good, but maybe not quite at that same level. But he's got 2.5 years of control, and it's a really good reliever. So you would expect him to get a pretty good return. And Dylan Lesko's a really interesting return here because he's got that prospect pedigree as he was the number 15 overall pick in 2022, one of the top high school pitchers taken. He's got an elite changeup, curveball, and a solid fastball. The problem that he's got is that he ended up having Tommy John surgery, like I think right after he got drafted, and he's really, really, really struggled on the field since he came back. Last year, he didn't pitch much. He came back late last year and was not great. This year, it's been really poor in 16 starts at high A, which is an aggressive promotion for a 20-year-old, but still, it's not great. He's walking tons of guys. That's an issue right now for him. So I don't know that he was valued quite what the
Mhm.
market or what the publications have valued him at. But this is a very good lottery ticket to get for a reliever. And then you've got
Yep.
Homer Bush Jr.
Yeah.
is a elite speed guy that's he's a legitimate somewhat of a prospect. And then Gonzalez is an 18-year-old that has some power. He did make the Rays list that on Fangraphs at number 60, but that's crazy. They have 60 guys that are worth putting on a prospect list. That's just insane. But
Yeah.
I will say, Jason Adam was with the Cubs before he went over to the Rays. I could not stand watching him. He either had it or he didn't. And from what I've gathered from Rays fans, he's the same way. He's just been a little more have it and a little less don't have it. But this season he started off very shaky and he's turned it around. So I know I wouldn't have made this trade, and I think this is this and the Yimi Garcia trade were very surprising in that these are relievers with half a season of control, like less than half a season at this point, and you're getting guys like Clase and Lesko who they're not maybe top 100 prospects, but they're maybe top 150, top 200 prospects. That's very, very strong returns of guys with very clear skills, right? Dylan Lesko's got a lot of stuff. He can't throw strikes, right? There's a very clear weakness, but he's got a lot of skill. Jonathan Clase, no power, but grade speed, a lot of skill. So, there's warts on these prospects, but these are good prospects getting moved. And you got to be thrilled as an organization that's selling off a major league piece that theoretically you can sign again in November, and you just picked up a guy with these skill sets.
Yeah.
Like this is a bit wild for these returns.
Yeah, and one more note on Lesko, and is that the Padres have been notorious for pushing guys like way too fast in the minors.
Oh, yeah.
And Dylan Lesko basically came out of high school. He was a high school draft pick, and he had the Tommy John surgery, so his age is a little bit higher now. He's 20 years old. But they basically dumped him straight into high A.
Yeah.
Without any, and that's a very aggressive thing to do. He only pitched 16 innings at A ball, and they promoted him, even though he wasn't that good at A ball. So I think that's another team might be able to put a little bit better of a development plan behind him than the Padres, especially the Padres pitching prospects haven't been quite as good as they've been with position players.
Yeah.
They've been good, but they've had to acquire a lot of their pitchers through Preller trades.
Yeah. So as we approach 20 minutes left before the trade deadline, we got another update from Craig Mish that says, "Oh my God, more trades are coming. This is wild," from the Marlins. When Craig Mish speaks, you usually listen.
Yeah.
So that's going to be fun to watch.
His other one was interesting too. He said that they won't need me tonight
Yeah.
to hit because they won't have any players. He said they have a hotel fully stocked and ready to go with pitchers, hitters, all kinds of players. So
Yeah,
that is
Who
crazy.
else are the Marlins moving?
One of the
Brazoban, relievers, right?
Brazoban just went to the Mets.
Okay.
Oh, that's what it is.
Brazoban. Well, they still got
Cronin, Nardi.
Declan Cronin, and Nardi.
They might move another pitcher. I mean, they've talked about Edward Cabrera at times. I don't know.
Fangraphs has them having 3 starting pitchers right now.
Yeah,
I mean,
crazy.
Jesus Sanchez is another guy that there's been talk about them maybe moving.
This one's from one of them. Says Brazoban to the Mets there, so we'll see that one. But we'll have to fly through a lot of these because we still got a lot to talk about before the deadline here. And David's going to take like 45 minutes on this next one.
I'll try not to.
That's between the Cubs and the Rays there, where the Cubs acquired third baseman Isaac Paredes from the Rays, and they sent over third baseman, if you can call him that, Christopher Morel, right-handed pitcher Hunter Biggie, and right-handed pitcher Ty Johnson. So, David, you were a big Morel truther.
Oh yeah.
It's been a joke in our fantasy and our group chats there. But getting Isaac Paredes back to the Cubs, who you traded for, was that the Castellanos one?
It was the Jeimer Candelario, Justin Wilson, and Alex Avila trade.
There you go.
In 2017, they tossed in Isaac Paredes for no reason.
That was one of the worst
to that
trades
deal.
ever.
I'm more mad about that trade than I am about the Jose Quintana trade that occurred that same trade deadline, which included Dylan Cease and Eloy Jimenez, because the logic for that was bad. Anyway, so Isaac Paredes is an all-star this season with the Rays, right? 30 home run season last year, and he's got one of the most unique profiles, hitter profiles in Major League Baseball. He does not strike out. He walks a ton, and he hits a lot of pull home runs, right? And that's kind of his profile, right? The Statcast sliders do not tell you the whole story. People are going to go in there and go, well, if we overlay this on Wrigley Field, he loses 10 home runs. Like, ultimately, I think this is a guy that has a lot of really good bat to ball skills. With this kind of whiff rate and walk rate, this is a guy who's very, very good at putting the bat on the baseball. He plays third base defense, right? I could not be more thrilled to see this, but we went into this weekend saying the Cubs are going to sell. What are the Cubs doing? Buying maybe the best player that's changing teams over the course of this whole deadline. Like that's what I don't understand what's going on, but I'm fully for it. Christopher Morel got 3.5 months, right, to try and win the Cubs third base job. And they gave him a lot of runway. He made a lot of mistakes. He was getting better, but it was coming at the cost of his offense, I think. It was pretty clear, right? His on-base percentage was 300. He was batting below 200, right? His xwOBA was really high, hitting the ball really hard, but he really wasn't generating the results that you want to see. And ultimately, the fit for Isaac Paredes with the Cubs is a lot better than the fit with Christopher Morel has with the Cubs going forward, because Christopher Morel is going to have to play left field or second base, and the Cubs have guys there. Those guys, they're entrenched. Ian Happ, Nico Hoerner, presuming we go 20 more minutes and they're still on the team, they're entrenched there. They're going to be there for the next couple of seasons. Morel was going to have to play DH. He's really athletic. You don't want an athletic guy playing DH. So, there wasn't really going to be room for him. Being able to take him at maybe his lowest value in the last 3 years and swap him for an all-star third baseman is absurd. Hunter Biggie's good. He had a 99-mile-an-hour fastball, but he has very little experience, very little track record. The Rays might turn him into a Pete Fairbanks. They might struggle, see him struggle to stir strikes. Who knows, right? And Ty Johnson was one of those. He's a model guy. The Cubs drafted him like the 18th round. Like, this is a crazy trade. How do you get an all-star third baseman for this? I mean, I'm hoping this is finally the Cubs getting their Christian Yelich, Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt for a ridiculous haul. I think Christopher Morel ends up being really good for the Rays, given that he won't have to be playing third base, which is kind of clearly not his natural position at this point. And, I think it only took 5 minutes, but that's kind of my thoughts. Is I'm really excited about this, and I wish Christopher all the best because he's awesome.
Orioles are acquiring Eloy Jimenez from the White Sox.
That's interesting.
All right, all 10 games he'll play. Yeah. I just said his name. His name. I put it into existence.
You sure did.
That's very, very interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Are they going to move Mountcastle?
I mean, Mountcastle's been playing first though.
But Santander can play first.
Santander plays right field most of the time.
Is he playing right? Okay.
Yeah, he's
Cowser.
Right field.
It's Cowser, Kjerstad. They moved Stowers and Hayes already, so Mullins.
Mullins, yeah.
I guess
I don't know.
Just going to DH. I mean, I wouldn't put Eloy in the outfield anyways.
Eloy's probably DHing. He's probably
he's got a DH.
Platoon with O'Hearn, maybe.
Somebody said Trevor Rogers for Eloy.
Oh my gosh. Better than the trade they did.
Yeah. There's probably another one coming down soon.
I was going to add one thing on that Cubs Rays trade real quick with Paredes. I'm with you on most of that, David. I think that Paredes has 3.5 years of control left. He's a free agent 2028. So that's a pretty big deal in this trade, and I have a sneaky feeling this is the Rays we're dealing with. I'm wondering if the Rays were not thinking we're thinking they're going to be selling high on him.
I think
yeah.
There's not much growth I think Paredes is going to do, but if the Paredes can do what he's been doing for the Cubs, that is such a huge improvement to what they've been dealing with at third base. I mean, Miles Mastrobuoni played like 10 of the last 12 games at third base. Like, even if Paredes doesn't play at the level that he's played at for the last year and a half, which is a very good player, I am fully on board with this player coming to the Cubs. Like, this is a huge deal.
Yeah, and on our tweets here, Bob Nightingale says, which you can take it to a grain of salt, because he has definitely been back the last couple of days. Yesterday he said the Braves were the Giants were paying Soler's contract. And then he corrected it like 5 minutes later. He is saying the White Sox are dumping the contract of Eloy to the Orioles. So it's kind of a salary dump, but that was also what he said yesterday he also got the contract part of it wrong yesterday with the Braves Giants trade. So
Yeah.
who knows if he's right or not.
Sorry, I'm just typing that in here and getting other stuff too. Okay, so let's do a couple real quick ones here. And that was the Royals and Rangers lining up to see the Royals get Michael Lorenzen. The Rangers got left-handed pitcher Walter Pennington. Lorenzen was going to run out of spot to start there. They're getting Male back. They're going to get DeGrom back soon. They had just got Scherzer back. Lorenzen was promised to start. He didn't really have a place to start anymore there, so get him somewhere that will use him. And the Royals, he'll be solid there. They get a left-hand pitcher back. Jump over to the Reds and the Mariners. We had talked about Ty France, or I don't know if we got to even talk about that really. Ty France got put on waivers, had cleared basically waivers, and then got traded to the Reds for catcher Andrew Salcedo. France's fit there's going to be a little interesting because they already have a ton of infielders as it is. But he's a good bat when he's on, and I think him in Great American Ballpark is going to be really fun. So those are just a couple interesting kind of under the radar type moves. We won't spend too much time on it, but I guess the next one we're going to spend a decent amount of time on is this 3-team deal that we had happen yesterday, and that was between the Dodgers, the White Sox, and the Cardinals. This is a really weird deal where the Cardinals acquire right-handed pitcher Erick Fedde and outfielder Tommy Pham from the Chicago White Sox. The Dodgers acquire infielder or utility guy Tommy Edman from the Cardinals and prospect Oliver Gonzalez from the Cardinals. And then they also acquire right-handed pitcher Michael Kopech from the White Sox. And the White Sox gets Miguel Vargas, Alexander Abertus, and Yarel Perez from the Dodgers here. And we have the Philadelphia Phillies close to acquiring Tanner Banks from the White Sox as we talk about that. So just I'll give my real quick perspective of the Dodgers part here. Edman was a guy that kind of popped up out of nowhere. Seemed like, hey, they could use him, especially with the amount of injuries on the infield they've had. He himself is battling an injury. He had to have off-season surgery on his wrist. He was rehabbing and sprained his ankle, and he's just barely getting back to rehab games now, so he's probably 2 weeks away. I don't love him overall. Like, he doesn't hit for enough power. He doesn't really walk much, but he's a super good defender and super fast, which it's something that the Dodgers could use all over the place. Kopech is really, really interesting to me, especially having an extra year of control. I think putting him in the Mark Prior lab, they could get something elite out of him. When he's on, he's the nastiest pitcher. He's unhittable. When he's off, it's terrible with the walks. And then the pitcher is just a DSL prospect there. But overall, I think it's an interesting deal. I think the plan actually is to have Tommy Edman be the center fielder most days, and move Andy Pajas into a platoon in right field with Jason Hayward. And I think that is because of another deal we'll mention here in a little bit that the Dodgers, I guess we can just throw it in here. Just why not?
Yeah.
The Dodgers reacquired Ahmed Rosario from the Rays for a pitcher that had like a 7 ERA in Double-A or whatever it is. So he seems like he's going to be a utility infielder there that allows Edman to become more of the primary center fielder at that point. But just a really interesting 3-way deal. So you guys battle for who wants to take the White Sox and the Cardinals part of this, but we are now 10 minutes until the deadline, and we still got a ton to get through here. So
yeah, I'll talk about the Cardinals part because I don't think David wants to. They got Erick Fedde, who has a 3.11 ERA in his return from the KBO. Was he in Korea or Japan?
He was Korea.
Korea.
He was Korea's MVP last year.
Yeah, he was incredible over there, and he came over, signed a 2-year deal. He's been really good for the White Sox. They traded him to the Cardinals, and his peripherals are a little bit lower, but they're still really good. He's got like a mid-3s FIP, and he's still been good. And he's under control next year as well. So that's a big deal for the Cardinals, who are going to lose at least 2 pitchers. I think they lose 3 pitchers out of their rotation after this year. I know they lose Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson. I think they lose Nicholas too, don't they?
I think not Michaelis, but they do lose Mats.
They lose Mats. That's who it is. So that was pretty big. And then of course you've got Tommy Pham there, who is once again a St. Louis Cardinal. It's come full circle. He's back. He's been kind of replacement level this year. He's pretty fine depth, fourth outfielder, platoon him with Burleson maybe type thing. His walk rate has decreased a little bit over the last couple of years. That used to be kind of his calling card, was just elite walk rates, get on base. It's hadn't been quite as good over the last couple of years, but he's still a solid, he's a solid big leaguer, and they need solid big leaguers and for some depth there. So definitely, I think that's pretty good gets for the Cardinals.
Yeah. So David, what do you think about the White Sox?
What are they doing? Like, this is just a terrible trade, right? Like the framework of this deal doesn't make sense. Erick Fedde was maybe the third best starter available at the deadline here, and he's got another year of control. So like, there's some real value there, and sure, like I'm guessing that the White Sox internal models don't have Fedde being the pitcher he is now next year, right? But to get Miguel Vargas and some lower level prospects for in a market where we're seeing some pretty crazy returns for a starting pitcher, where we have not even seen many starting pitchers move because the values are just really crazy. I mean, Jack Flaherty still hasn't dealt, and we're 10 minutes from the deadline. So
weird.
I just don't understand this trade from the White Sox perspective. Miguel Vargas is going to get some playing time. The low-level prospects don't make sense, and they didn't get anything from the Cardinals. The Cardinals give them effectively nothing in this deal and get Erick Fedde and Tommy Pham. Like, this is a dream deal for the Cardinals, and it sucks because it's the Cardinals.
Yeah, well, I mean, I will want to note Tommy Edman. I know he's been out this year. People have forgotten about him, and he's not a super high upside type player, but he has had 12 WAR over the last 3 years. He's a solid player, and
yeah,
it's not like it's not like they gave up nothing. I mean, it's just kind of one of those things where there's definitely question marks about how well he's going to come back from this injury too. It's one of those injuries that might be a longer term. He struggled in his rehab assignments, like. That could be a question. So
it's a wrist injury. Wrist injuries are really bad for hitters, and he is a 99 WRC plus career hitter. So this is defense based, and
Rosenthal, Rosenthal's reporting that Garrett Crochet is not getting traded.
Yeah. The White Sox doing stupid White Sox things.
Well, the other thing about the last trade, speaking of the White Sox, one more thing. I don't want to ramble on it, but why are they picking up post-type prospects who have already made their debuts and already have their service time clock started? Like, we're trading everybody, we're gonna blow it up and rebuild. Why are we getting guys who are like already big leaguers who probably need 2 or 3 more years to work out, but then they're free agents? Like, that's the thing that's weird to me with that Vargas part of it. But we can move on now.
Yeah, I don't get the White Sox not trading Crochet right now. I mean, his value's probably about as high as it was going to be.
I bet his value tanked. I bet it tanked when he said the thing about the extension and having to have it.
Damien, the Dodgers did a move.
Kevin,
it's not a good one.
Kevin Kiermaier, LOL.
Oh, there's your center field.
I don't get it. I mean, I know they liked him too, but I just don't. I don't know.
Draft picks, speed guy who hits lefty and isn't that good at anything else. Well, he's good at defense. But...
I wonder if we see them acquire Jack Flaherty here soon, especially with Crochet not being moved. But okay, where are we at? Okay, so we had Yarborough's going to the Blue Jays, who is DFA'd, so that's funny.
We might have to hit pause because they're about to start streaming in deals here. We'll keep talking about stuff in between here. But
did Passan just say on ESPN that Flaherty's going to the Dodgers?
He just did. Yep, just tweeted it.
Oh, there you go.
Jack Flaherty to the Dodgers. Yep.
There it is.
There it is. Maybe Bob Nightingale is actually like a legend.
Yeah, just spoke it into existence.
That fit is really good though. The Dodgers need starting pitching. Flaherty's been really good, and it's not a retread for Flaherty, like the Orioles, the
Yeah,
Cardinals.
we were talking, before the show. Me and Damien were before you got here, David, about the need of a rental because they have so many guys locked up. I mean, Otani's going to replace him in the rotation next year, so
Yeah.
they've got so many guys locked up for multiple seasons that they really didn't need anybody necessarily next year. They didn't need to
Right.
spend a ton of prospect capital for
Yeah.
that control. They just needed to get somebody to get them through the rest of this year. So I like
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
I
We'll
wonder
see
what the
is,
return.
but
The return is for that.
But
That's the Tigers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're 4 minutes here until the deadline, which deals. If you're not familiar with the Martin Perez to the Padres, what potentially?
That's from the Pirates?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see about that one.
Huh.
But yeah, we'll see what the return is there. I wonder. It's going to be interesting
I'm
with
looking
the way the rental prices has been.
See, I don't think they would touch rushing DePaula
No.
Lorenzo.
No.
I wouldn't be
I
shocked
do wonder if Kyle Hurd is in this.
He could be.
I wouldn't be totally shocked if one of the catchers gets moved because a couple of them have struggled a little bit in their levels.
I mean, Cartaya very much could be. He is.
Yeah.
Cartaya would make a lot of sense. A little bit post hype, but still some skill.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a. I think he also has to be protected on the 40-man this year.
Oh, does he? Because the Tigers definitely have space for that. They just traded Carson Kelly.
Yeah,
I think so too. So, anyways, we were 3 minutes. What I was trying to say is the way the deadline works in baseball. Deals roll in like 30 minutes past even.
Yeah.
So we'll have at that too. We'll have stuff coming through it the entire time, and we still have plenty to talk about from these other ones here. But we want to be able to live react to any of these ones that happen right at the deadline here, like Flaherty and anything else that potentially happens. I don't know. Is there anyone else that we are expecting to for sure be traded? I mean, like Flaherty was the one, and then Tanner Scott, which that one happened before we came on.
Honestly, I've drawn a blank right now just because there's so much that is going on. I don't drawing a little bit of a blank right now on it. So maybe more Marlins.
Okay, well, this is getting interesting.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, this is super, super interesting.
Matt, I don't know. You have the chat pulled up. We've some info, some insider info from our guy Greg Zumak. We'll refrain from sharing it for now.
Cubs
but
getting pulled.
I very much don't know about that one, but hey, we'll
see what happens.
We'll see.
What I haven't. I can't see it. I don't have it pulled up.
Well, we don't want to say it on the.
We're waiting. Gotta wait.
Oh, never mind. I see now.
Yeah.
Martin Perez for Ronaldus Jimenez.
Okay, so real quick before we do this, we're wanting to live react to this stuff, but can we really just for a second get into how kind of dumb it is that the White Sox aren't going to take advantage of Crochet here at the moment?
Yeah.
Like I know the whole like, hey, like we want an extension type stuff, but I just feel like if you get Crochet in your locker room, like how is he going to say no to wanting to pitch in a postseason race?
So I think the thing is
Thyram Leonzo and Trey Sweeney for Flaherty there.
Okay, so Leonzo, yeah. One of the catchers, like we said.
He's a catcher, and then Sweeney's a shortstop prospect that would have had to be protected on that this year. Lorenzo's still a little bit farther away, but that's honestly, it's not a terrible deal because they have Smith, Cartaya, and rushing still.
Yeah, I've seen him pretty high up on some lists before too, I think.
Lorenzo's definitely a hyped, a Dodgers hyped
acquired Dylan Carlson.
That's interesting.
The Rays do.
Daniel De Los Santos went to the Yankees.
Have we ever seen a big trade between the
Daniel De Los Santos did?
Yep, from the Padres.
Have we ever seen a big trade between the Rays
to the Yankees?
and the Cardinals?
Yep.
For what?
I have no idea. It popped into our Discord.
Luis Garcia also goes from the Angels to the Red Sox.
All right. Well, that one actually was being rumored. We had heard something about the Red Sox going after an Angels pitcher.
Yeah. There's so much happening here. Yep, Yankees acquire Daniel De Los Santos. I wonder is that for Nestor? I bet you that's for Nestor.
That would be interesting.
Sean Armstrong going back to the Cardinals for Carlson.
Okay.
So the Cardinals did use Carlson on a reliever. It was just Sean Armstrong. Armstrong's a sneaky good reliever too.
Guess what, boys?
It's deadline. The
6 o'clock
deadline is
Eastern,
here.
5 o'clock
Yep.
Central, 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock weird Damien time. So
pencils down. Even though the deals have already been agreed to, they'll obviously continue to trickle in.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'll see whether any of these
I mean,
any of these fun ones get put through.
I have felt like there would be a surprise right at the deadline this year. Just for some reason, it was my gut, but we'll see. So, I mean,
Yep.
we usually get about 20, 30 minutes after the deadline. You can still see some things. So,
Yeah.
there's Craig Mish. I got one more in me. So, I guess the
Wonder
Marlins
what
are
that
moving
one
again.
is. I mean, it's got to be like either Cronin or Nardi.
Yep.
I would assume. So, yeah, just a wild like stream here as we've hit 3 o'clock or 6 o'clock Eastern.
Wait, Paul DeYoung is just switching dugouts.
Yeah,
because
he's
they're
going across the street.
Yeah, the
That's
Royals
funny.
and the White Sox were playing. So the Padres did get Martin Perez, it looks like.
Okay. That's fine depth for their rotation, even though I don't think he's been good at all this year. But every big major team that's a contender needs that type of guy that he's experienced and you can throw him out there if you have injuries, because you can no longer acquire anybody after the trade deadline. Used to, you had the waiver trades, so unless something happened in the last couple of weeks of the season, you can protect yourself from it. But
Rosenthal says nothing from the Cubs. Taillon stays.
Taillon stays. That was it.
There you go.
So our other deal did not come to fruition.
Didn't come through.
We will not mention
So
that.
that's it.
But I wonder if we see some other, like, do we see a Rengifo trade, or something there? What's this other Marlins one? Tyler Anderson is another name that like we might have expected to get moved there. He's got another year of control though, and that money might scare people off.
I was gonna say that the year of control for him is probably not a good thing.
Yeah, I wonder if we see anyone else from the Tigers go, like a Vierling or a Canna.
Canna, it's surprising that
hadn't gone somewhere.
Yeah, I'm surprised Taillon didn't move.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised about him, but he's still under control next year, isn't he?
Who?
Taillon.
Taillon is 2 more years.
Yeah.
2 more years.
And
he's a couple years.
The reason I think that Taillon ended up not getting moved, it's not because the Cubs started him last night. It's because teams are a little more averse to adding budget mid-season.
Yeah.
The Taillon deal is 2 years, $34 million. If Taillon was a free agent this offseason, coming off of a pretty good season, ERA in the 3s, and really good strikeout numbers, he would get a lot more than 2 years, $34 million at age 32. Like, he definitely would. This is a good deal right now. It looks like a really strong deal. The problem is that teams are not willing to add that money, and so the Cubs would have to give money per year to buy Taillon down to make it like a palatable deal. And I don't think they were able to agree on that. Plus the added necessity of valuing prospects properly for a pretty good starter that can probably start in your playoff rotation. That was just going to end up being too complicated. I think, if Taillon gets traded, it'd probably be in the off season, but for now, I think he just stays.
Yeah. No more Angels moves, it looks like. So they keep Anderson, they keep Rengifo. Everyone else except Estevez and Luis Garcia, who just went. So that's that. We're still waiting to see what that other Marlins one is that Mish was talking about. Kiermaier was intended to retire at the end of the season, wasn't he?
Yeah, he is. So that's a strict. Yeah, that's a strict. He's
try and give him a chance for a ring.
Yeah. Yep, he gets a chance to go get a ring here. That's good for Kiermaier. Hopefully he gets
and before
play in the playoffs.
When he chose the Blue Jays, he was down to Dodgers or Blue Jays.
Yeah.
So I very much just think and he's an Andrew Friedman guy from Tampa too. So he probably easy enough for them to go in there. Seems like that's it for the Guardians, which we haven't even got to talk about any of theirs yet.
Yeah, and they didn't even do that much. I'm very surprised they didn't get more involved on the.
I'm not
deadline.
surprised.
I'm
I'm
not
surprised
too
the two
surprised.
names I'm surprised at the 2 names they got, but I'm not surprised that they didn't do more. If that makes sense.
Disappointed but not surprised.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's the name of the Cleveland Guardians for sure.
Yeah.
Let's start going back through the trades that have happened. We got a lot to go through today.
You want to just do today's, or where do we want to go?
Well, I think we have.
We should have like one more from yesterday.
We had.
Well, we're still up at like
Justin
Turner.
Justin Turner was the next one.
Yeah.
We still have to talk about Thomas Kikuchi, or 2 big ones.
Montas
Soler from last night, and then everything today that we
Yeah.
haven't already just talked about.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll go into that, and then maybe as we get to the end, some of these deals that happened we can mention or still go through there, because I still think we probably want to break down some of these other ones that have actually happened rather than mention them. But okay, so Justin Turner, who was with the Blue Jays, he got traded to Seattle Mariners for outfielder RJ Schreck, which is funny. But that was just another solid bat. We had talked about that. The Mariners already acquired Randy Rosarena. They had acquired a couple relievers. They needed after the Ty France thing, get somebody in there that can also play maybe some first and some DH there too. So he kind of fits there.
Rockies.
Yeah. And then so the one that we were kind of hinting at there with the Guardians is that they actually acquired outfielder Lane Thomas from the Nationals for left-handed pitcher Alex Clemis, shortstop prospect Rafael Ramirez Jr., and third baseman Jose Tena. I think it's pretty interesting there for the Rockies, or not for the Rockies. You said Rockies, threw me off. For the Guardians, I feel like their need was more of a center fielder rather than a right fielder that hits lefties. But still they're acquiring somebody who has control. I think he has 2 years of control left. 1.5 years of control. So they're still adding something there. So good for the Guardians there. They also added today pitcher Alex Cobb. I think what was that for a pitcher Jacob Bresnahan, and then player to be named later. But Guardians do make a couple moves there to help improve their chances.
Yeah, Lane Thomas is interesting, solid. He hits lefties really well. He actually steals a ton of bases, so he kind of fits the Guardians and what they typically like to do. His defense.
Oh, there you go.
There it is. Pirates acquired Giants. Giants got Mark Canha.
What?
Yep.
Oh man.
Okay, Farhan.
We tried to keep talking about it, but that is hilarious. Dude.
Okay, so this is hilarious because why we're all laughing right now. Last night, the Giants traded Jorge Soler back to the Braves to get out of the contract, and then they go ahead and just then reacquire Mark Canha today to not fill, because they're supposed to call up Marco Luciano to get the at bats from Soler.
Yeah.
And they didn't trade anyone else. So this doesn't make any sense.
No.
Okay.
Anyway,
we'll get to it.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
But yeah, on Lane Thomas, this is a guy whose metrics haven't really lined up with his performance last year, and you've started to see the cracks a little bit this year. He hadn't been as good, but he does hit lefties well still, and the Cleveland really does need outfield help, or they did. So they always do. Yeah. I don't think there's been a year that Cleveland didn't need outfield help. So they got that. They gave up some interesting guys. Tena is a guy who is the new number 10 prospect for the Nationals, which is pretty good. The Nationals farm system's got pretty good with all the trades that they've made. He's made a recent debut. He's a power over hit guy. And then Clemmy is a big fastball command question young guy. He's a number 13 prospect, and then Ramirez is the number 29 prospect.
What the heck is going on?
I don't understand anything.
Yeah, that's
Isn't even a trade. All right, whatever.
Austin Slater to the Orioles. Why are they acquiring more outfielders?
Yeah, so that's that. They were saying that yesterday that the Orioles were looking for another right-handed outfielder, and I guess a lot of their outfielders like Kowser and Kjerstad and all of these guys are left-handed. But why did you trade Austin Hayes then? If you're just going to look for another Austin Hayes, that's what doesn't make sense to me.
No, not at all. Oh, Mish said the Marlins are done, so maybe not that one more in them.
Yep. But
So yeah, that's interesting. So then let's jump to the next one, which was one that kind of blew a lot of us out of the water when it happened, and that was the Astros acquiring Yusei Kikuchi from the Toronto Blue Jays for a haul of Jake Bloss, outfielder Joey Loperfido, and infield outfielder Will Wagner. Seems like a massive cost for a rental in Kikuchi.
Yeah, and this
Seth
is one
Johnson
of those
to Baltimore, from Baltimore to Phillies. What?
Diamondbacks to acquire Dylan Floro.
Floro. Yeah, Seth Johnson goes from Baltimore to Philly too. No idea what that's for.
That is interesting. But on the Kikuchi deal, Kikuchi's stuff has still been really, really good this year. But he's still getting hit. I mean, he had what looked to be a breakout for like a month and a half, and then he's just been torched in his last 12 starts to a 6+ ERA. So it's been a major struggle there. But the stuff is still good. The Astros must have really liked him because they gave up the number 92 prospect on Fangraphs, who is gotten a lot of love. In Bloss, is that how you say it?
Bloss.
And he is he's made his big league debut, and he's a likely mid to back end rotation type guy, like a number 4 starter. Loperfido is their number 3 prospect now in Toronto, so they just acquired like 2 of their top 3 guys in their system, and he's got like a lot of tools. He's just got hit questions, and Will Wagner is actually Billy Wagner's son.
That's cool.
And he's a contact bat that's kind of positionless, but he's kind of interesting. But it's kind of crazy that Billy Wagner being a famous Astro, trading his son is interesting. So,
I think this haul is a little predicated on Loperfido being the guy who's hitting like 30 home runs in AAA right now. I don't really see that. He's kind of reminds me of like Matt Mervis or even a De Los Santos. Like, is this a guy who's going to play well at the major league level? It's a great gamble to make if you're the Blue Jays. Great gamble to make. But for this to be like a crazy haul, Loperfido's got to hit like he is in AAA, and I don't know that he is that guy. Bloss is probably like a 4th, 5th starter going forward. He's got some good stuff, and he's really young. He's like 23. That's, I think, the big key for this is that Bloss maybe could have been the play all by himself, and getting more than that is what makes this look kind of nuts. But yeah, this Kikuchi deal, I think it might have even shut down a few of the the trades today, because it's a big haul. I don't think it's as big and as crazy, but I'm not as high on Loperfido. But if you are high on Loperfido, this deal is nuts.
Yeah, very much so. And then if you look at the deal, I mean, obviously we have the perspective now as we're at past the deadline. But if you look at the deal that the Astros gave up for Yusei Kikuchi, and then you look at what the Dodgers gave up for Jack Flaherty, who are both rental pitchers, you probably are like, what the heck just happened here? But we'll talk more about the Flaherty stuff later. Another interesting one, Nationals did not trade Kyle Finnegan, which is interesting too. We had was the Brewers acquiring Frankie Montas from the Cincinnati Reds, another interdivision trade there, and the Reds getting outfielder Joey Wiemer and right-handed pitcher Jacob Junis. So Montas, I think he only on the 1-year deal, or did he have an option?
He's one.
He was the
goes
1-year deal straight up.
So he had showed flashes really, to begin the season of being really good. He had struggled as of late, but goes to the Reds, who were making a push there, or goes to the Brewers, and the Reds get a young outfielder there, where had kind of fallen out of favor with all the other guys in Milwaukee. So kind of fits what both teams are kind of looking for there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I don't. Montas has been pretty rough this year, so
yeah.
I'm kind of surprised that he was somebody. But the Brewers really, they've got some top end guys already. They just need some depth in their pitching rotation. So they got a good bullpen. I think that's fine. Wiemer's kind of a guy that you kind of hate to give up because he was a high prospect, like as late as last year. But man, he really struggled in the big leagues last year, and he struggled in AAA too. So he's kind of a post-hype lottery ticket for the Reds to get. And then Jacob Junis he's got a 2.42 ERA this year. He hadn't pitched a ton. He's pretty solid long reliever when he's healthy. He can give you a couple innings, 2 or 3 innings in each outing, and his peripherals aren't that good, but he's fine. So I mean, I guess it's pretty fair deal there.
Yeah. So then we'll go talking about the Braves deal that they made last night, which was acquiring Jorge Soler and Luke Jackson from the Giants for Tyler Matzik and infielder Saban Sabalos, which is why we were laughing at the Mark Canada deal. But the Braves are taking on most of that money from Soler, but getting the guy back who won World Series MVP for them, getting Luke Jackson back, who was also a part of that team, trading away Tyler Matzik, but I think he's been hurt and not really been really good this year. But Matt, you get Jorge Soler back.
Yeah, this is I don't know how much. I don't know if I like this. And there's this deadline from the Braves in general. I like Soler. I think he's a good player. He still hits the ball really hard. His own base percentage is really good. He takes a lot of walks. He's able to get on base. But the thing is, I feel like the Braves really need somebody who can play the outfield. And I mean, they're going to put Soler in the outfield, but I mean, he hadn't played the outfield this year, and he didn't play the outfield, or he played the outfield very little last year. He did play out there, but he didn't play there much last year, and he had never been good in the outfield to start with. So, the Braves have Marcell Ozuna hogging up the DH, and then next year, Soler's under contract for 2 more years. So they're paying him a lot of money for the next 2 years. And next year, you're still going to have Ozuna, and then Ronald Acuna is coming back, who's probably going to need to DH some too, coming off his injury. So, I mean, you're basically banking on Soler to be an everyday outfielder, and that's a pretty big risk for me, taking on all that money for a guy who we're not really sure if he can even do it. And then Luke Jackson has really struggled this year, and last year he came off of the Tommy John surgery, but he's shown some flashes over the last couple of months of his slider maybe coming back, and that was kind of his signature pitch. So it's kind of a buy low, why not get some bullpen depth? Obviously he's liked by the Braves. They've had it. He was there for a long time. I mean, that's fine. And Matzik, as you said, he's injured and he's cooked. In my opinion, I kind of hate it, but he has not been good. His velocity's down like 5 miles per hour from pre-Tommy John, and he can't get healthy. So I hate to see that. That was kind of a money transaction type thing. And then Cabellas is kind of a contact defense bat that doesn't have a lot of power. He's fine. He was like a 20th best prospect for the Braves, which I will say one thing. The Braves farm system has gotten way better over the last year or two. It really has. Lots of international free agents have signed, and they made some good draft picks. So I think I've seen them ranked in the top 15 to 20 over the last few months, whereas before the last couple of months they were like back of the big leagues, like 30th or something. So it has gotten better, but yeah. So that, I mean, I guess it's fair. I think it might be just giving up a prospect at all, and that might be a tiny bit. Honestly, I don't know if the value is unfair. I don't think it's a good fit for the Braves this time with Soler. I really don't.
It doesn't seem like it's a very good fit for the Braves with that, with everything that they needed there. It just seemed like they just were going to get a guy who they had known before. They needed a bat, and they were willing to take on the money. That seems like what most of it was about. So, so let's jump to deadline day. And our first one we had happen was the Yankees getting Mark Leiter Jr. from the Cubs for infielder Ben Cowles and right-handed pitcher Jack Neely. David, I know you weren't too happy about this one.
No, this is given. We just talked about Yimi Garcia going for Jonathan Clase. Jason Adam going for a big return, and Dylan Lesko and Carlos Estevez going for Klassen and the other starting pitcher there. Like those returns are so much farther above the value for Leiter than this deal. And I think Leiter's probably a little bit less reliable than those guys, but he's been every bit the quality major league relief pitcher that those options have been over the last season and a half. And I don't understand why, because you don't need to trade Mark Leiter. He's got 2 more years of control. Like you don't have to trade him right now. There's no rush to get rid of a guy who's been this good for less than the very clear strong top 150 type guys that were going for other lottery tickets or for other relief pitchers here. So this is my least favorite trade of the three the Cubs made by a pretty wide margin, but it's ultimately fairly meaningless for the Cubs because I don't think the way the bullpen had trended. Leiter was an eighth inning guy at this point, and they end up not trading Neris. They don't trade Smiley, like guys who have some value at least in this market. But we saw a lot of relief pitchers shift teams, and it seems like the Cubs only wanted to trade Mark Leiter, who's been their best reliever over the last year and a half, which is odd. And they don't really get very much. The two prospects there's a relief prospect and a utility infielder. I'm not excited or wowed by that.
Yeah, this was a pretty dumb trade if you ask me. I mean, I don't know why the Cubs don't just keep Mark Leiter.
Yeah, just hang on to him.
Like, and the thing is, his ERA is high. He's got a 4.21 ERA, but man, the peripherals are like incredibly good. He gets tons of swing and miss. This is another time that Jed Hoyer has not valued the right things for future predictive, metrics as most guys do. I mean, he did the same thing with Hector Neris when he signed him. Hector Neris had an incredible ERA last year, but there were so many red flags that somebody like me could look at it and see it. And he still went out and paid him a pretty decent amount of money. And look how that's turned out. So, this another time that Jed Hoyer's like making weird moves that don't make a ton of sense. So I don't understand this one at all.
It's frustrating. And you could have just kept him. It would have been fine.
Yeah.
So a couple other deals that we'll just hit on real quick, and then we'll start talking about the Orioles and Marlins deal, where we had the Red Sox get Lucas Sims from the Reds for reliever Ovis Portes, and then we had the Diamondbacks get Josh Bell, who was put on waivers just for cash, basically there as an insurance for Christian Walker, who had a oblique injury last night. So those are just kind of a couple depth moves there. So let's talk about the Orioles and Marlins one. We had thought like Tanner Scott, the other relievers from the Marlins were definitely guys to go. And then this morning, Craig Mish was like, hey, Trevor Rogers' market is starting to heat up. Should be able to see a deal get completed soon. And then it was to the Orioles. And to our surprise, it was Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers for Trevor Rogers. He had a really good, 2021, and then I think he got hurt in 2022. I think he had to have, I don't know if it was Tommy John or not, but I know he had to have some sort of a surgery. And he's really struggled kind of coming back since. He's starting to look back to that self. I think he's had like 5 or 6 innings per start this year, and 8 of the 9 allowed like 2 runs or less this year. But still, Norby and Stowers seems like a little bit of a steep price as JD Davis goes to the Rays in a DFA trade. So I know we had a lot of talk in the group chat about this specific trade here, but Matt, what do you think about the return of Norby and Stowers, and then what Rogers is going to look like here with Baltimore?
Yeah, Rogers is a guy who had that incredible rookie season, but since he had some injuries and the part of it also being the post sticky stuff, which I'm not sure if it was a sticky stuff thing or he had a bunch of injuries thing or what, but his stuff isn't quite as good as it was. He's really struggled over the last couple of years since he came back. He's got he does have 2.5 years of control left. He's got a mid-4s ERA right now. I mean, he's just kind of a 5 starter, I guess, at this point that has some control left. And the return is pretty massive in the way that like Connor Norby is an elite performer. There's some question marks about how it's going to translate. Like we were talking about earlier, David was talking about Matt Mervis. There are some real question marks about Norby. I know that there's a lot of the prospect evaluators are split on him. In fact, he's the number 14 prospect in the Orioles organization on Fangraphs, but he's the number 7 prospect, and I believe in the top 100 overall on Baseball America. So there's a lot of split on Connor Norby, but for a guy who probably is not really that good of a pitcher, I mean, Connor Norby's a pretty huge return for that. And then Kyle Stowers is a guy that's a post-hype guy who's really struggled. I don't really see him as factoring in too much in this trade. I think he's kind of a throw-in. I don't think there's much there. But Connor Norby, I was surprised that the Marlins were able to get him for Rogers, who I thought would go for like a couple of like prospects in the 20s in an organization or something. So I thought it was definitely a
Yeah.
kind of a wild return for him.
Stowers reminds me of like he's going to be a strong side platoon type guy. You've got to hide him a little bit more against left-handed pitching.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the Orioles have necessarily needed to do that because they have such strong left-handed hitters, in their organization right now. Look, my thing is that Saris put out a graph today when Trevor Rogers was getting floated that since the sticky stuff ban, he's been effectively like 20% worse just in terms of pitching stuff. And it's like this guy pretty clearly was kind of that sticky stuff merchant, and now he's getting moved for a back end. Again, it's another one of those trades where it's like a back end top 100, maybe top 150 type of guy in Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers, who can probably be a strong side platoon bat for 3 or 4 years here. Like that's so much more than what Trevor Rogers has been and like needs to be for this Orioles team. He just needs to be their 5 starter here. He can effectively kind of stink, but if he pitches 5 innings every 5th day the rest of the way, then they've got what they need.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I do want to reiterate, there's a good chance that he is a sticky stuff merchant, but the sticky stuff ban came at a very similar time to his injuries too. So it might be an injury thing. I do want to give him the benefit of that on that because it sounds like we're accusing him of cheating, which he might have been, but it's not. It could have been the injuries too. But either way, it's not something that's coming back necessarily at this point. So that's kind of whichever way it is. So kind of that changed the whole picture.
I mean, I also don't think my thing with that is I don't think cheating is if you're not breaking the rules, it wasn't like there was rules in place to stop this stuff.
There was,
and then there were now there are. Yeah. So. Yeah.
But,
So let's talk about the Lucas Erceg deal to the Royals.
Yeah.
The A's get relief pitcher Mason Barnett, a right-handed pitcher Will Klein, and outfielder Jared Dickey from the Royals for relief pitcher Lucas Erceg, who's 29 years old. I think he still has, what did we say, Matt, like 4 years?
He's 4 more years.
He's a 2033 agent, maybe.
Yeah. So if it's that long, then he's got a long time. But he has electric stuff. Can top 100 or get to there. Has a nasty wipeout slider. I think it's a really good get for that Royals pin. Who they made a couple moves there, getting Hunter Harvey, getting Lucas Erceg to go with James MacArthur. Now Michael Lorenzen as well. Just fortifying that pitching staff there for a team that wants to try and compete a little bit. So Erceg is a guy who's highly coveted out on the market.
Yeah. Barnett's, I think, the key piece there.
Yeah, you know it.
So, is he an Auburn guy?
He is an Auburn guy.
Yeah. So, and then we talked about Paul DeJong going to the Royals already. Just depth kind of there as well. Paul Blackburn to the Mets is a little bit of an interesting one. The guy I don't think we expected to really get traded, but he went there for Cade Morris. But it's something about the Mets acquiring a starter, aka Chris Bassett too. We had a relief pitcher, Trevor Richards, go to the Blue Jays. Okay, let's get to the Padres and Marlins one, because that's probably our next kind of big trade to talk about. And that's with Tanner Scott and Brian Hoeing going to the Padres for Robbie Snelling, Adam Mazur, Graham Pauley, and Jay Beshers. That Padres bullpen is going to be absolutely disgusting right now. If you're talking about, Robert Suarez, Jeremiah Estrada, Adrian Morahone, Yuki Matsui, and then Tanner Scott and Brian Hoeing now as well. Like that's 3 dynamite lefties. That's 3 to 4 dynamite righties. They are loading up there. They weren't able to get a big starting pitcher at the deadline, but they did get basically the best bullpen upgrades you could probably get here. In a 2-for-1, but they did give up a lot. I think when Matt and I were looking, it was like the 3rd, 4th, 6th prospects in their system, and then like a mid-20s guy or late 20s guy. But it's still a big give up, especially for Scott, who is just a rental.
Yeah. I have a very big take on this trade that y'all are probably not going to agree with, and most people probably wouldn't agree with, but I think it's true. I think Brian Hoeing is the more valuable piece in this trade. than Tanner Scott because
Depends on
he's
how the
got
rest of the season
so
goes.
much.
Given
he-
the years of control,
so
I
much
could see
control
it.
left because Tanner Scott and Tanner Scott for that matter, he's been awesome this year, but he's had a lot of good luck on fly balls, not being home runs, especially in Marlins Park's a pretty big ballpark. It's tough to hit home runs there. So and Petco is too, but he's got a 1.18 ERA, but his peripherals are good. They're very good. They're borderline elite, but they're not that level of like I wouldn't give up anything like this for a reliever unless they had a legit 1.18 ERA. So I'm not 100% sold on Scott being this good. His walk rate is also way up this year. But Brian Hoeing's been really good. He can maybe start some too. He's kind of a swing guy, and he's got a lot of control left, so he's kind of interesting. This return is pretty huge. There's been a little bit of a pattern I've found with the Padres this year. They have had some of their top pitching prospects have struggled on the on the mound this year, and Robbie Snelling is one who is who's extremely young for Double A, but he struggled at Double A, a 6 ERA. Adam Mazer is another one who has really struggled at Triple A with an almost 8 ERA. He made some starts in the big leagues as well and had like a 8 ERA there as well. And so it's kind of one of those things where these guys or this team has kind of they seem to be selling off pieces that they don't think are performing like they would hope and don't think they're going to turn it around. It seems to be a theme with them. They've sold off a lot of pitchers who are struggling, who have a lot of potential. So, and those are two pretty big pieces there. And then Graham Pauley's just kind of a up and down guy, quad A player right now. I mean, he's got some form of prospect status. His power is fine. His hit tool is okay, but he's kind of struggled at AAA this year and in the big leagues. And Jay Bashirs, I think, is kind of a lottery ticket. But the two pitchers are the big part of this return, and they are just guys who are pretty high rated prospects who are struggling. But that's a lot to give up for two relievers, one being a rental.
This is a AJ Preller, another AJ Preller masterclass. I mean, this is exactly what you'd expect from an AJ Preller deadline, right? Address the biggest weakness on the team. It's maybe a little more than I was thinking, but they're getting two pitchers back. Snelling and Mazur are probably not going to factor into the next two seasons, which is really the Padres, season and a half. That's kind of the Padres window, basically. So, the Padres have been going wild. The Arias trade with the Marlins earlier this year is, enough to kind of galvanize them from a bit of a slow start back above 500. They've been able to maintain that. This is, I think, going to push them into that wild card spot. And it's a group that can win in the playoffs, especially if they get Yu Darvish and Joe Musgrove back before the end of the season. So
yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens with Darvish there. But all right, so let's do like a rundown real quick of all the trades that kind of happened since we started doing all this. So we had the Pirates acquire Brian De La Cruz. We got a little bit on that return. It's for right-handed pitcher John Seok Shim and first baseman Garrett Forrester. We had the Mets acquire relief pitcher Huskar
Brazoban,
for outfielder and third baseman Wilfredo Lara. We had the Orioles acquire Eloy Jimenez for left-handed pitcher Trey Mago. Seems like that was a salary dump trade. We had the Phillies acquire left-handed relief pitcher Tanner Banks from the White Sox for second base shortstop William Bergola. We had the Rays acquire Dylan Carlson for Sean Armstrong. We had the Orioles acquire Austin Slater. I saw what that return was, but it's not much. The Diamondbacks got Dylan Floro from the Nationals for third base Andres Chaparro. We had the Giants acquire Mark Canha from the Tigers for relief pitcher Eric Silva. We had the Dodgers acquire Kevin Kiermaier for Ryan Yarborough. And then we had Jack Flaherty to the Dodgers for Thairo Leonzo and Trey Sweeney. We had the Red Sox acquire Luis Garcia for a package of prospects that haven't really came out yet. And then we had Seth Johnson go from Baltimore to Philadelphia for relief pitcher Gregory Soto. And then we also had Martin Perez get traded from the Pirates to the Padres, and then Padres traded relief pitcher Aniel De Los Santos to the Yankees for I'm not sure what exactly at the moment. But of those, I guess we'll just each pick like one that we want to really talk about here, or just summarize the deadline itself in general if we want to. So what are you guys thinking?
I mean, I guess we can. Real quick, a couple of points. I thought the Brian De La Cruz trade. I thought the return for that was pretty weak. I wouldn't have moved him for that if I was the Marlins. They really didn't get a quality prospect in that one, so he's got a pretty good bit of control left, and there's some flashes of potential with him that he could maybe have a breakout at some point. So I thought I don't think that was a fantastic trade. The Eloy thing is really interesting, and how the Orioles are gonna manage him with as a DH with the guys that they currently have with Mountcastle and O'Hearn and some of the other guys they've got. And I thought that was interesting. And yeah, not a ton. I mean, a lot of teams getting relievers is expected right at the deadline. And the Jack Flaherty trade, I thought that was a pretty good return the Tigers got for him. But I get it. He's been really good this year. So it kind of was one of those returns that made sense considering how good Jack Flaherty's been and what the Dodgers need and what the window the Dodgers are in. So
interesting note that the Cardinals were talking to the Nationals about Dylan Floro for Dylan Carlson. They end up trading Dylan Carlson to the Rays for Sean Armstrong. Dylan Floro goes to the Diamondbacks for Andres Chaparro. I had to look up Andres Chaparro. Hadn't heard of him. He used to be a prospect in the Yankee system, and he's hitting .313 this year with like a .560 slugging and a .140 WRC plus in AAA. He's like 25 though, so I don't know what that means. He
Same age as Carlson.
Yeah, I'm like so. So my interesting thought is, did the Nationals like Chaparro more than Dylan Carlson? I guess. I still think there's still some ceiling in Dylan Carlson. Obviously, the Rays do too. So, that's a little bit questionable because the Yankees had an opportunity to bring Chaparro on last year, and when they were struggling offensively, didn't do it. And then they lost him to the Diamondbacks. Diamondbacks have now used him to trade for Dylan Floro, who is he's a decent reliever, maybe a seventh inning guy. He's nothing special. So I think Dylan Carlson probably would have been the better move if you're the Nationals.
Yeah, but I will say the one thing about that is that if you look at the Nationals window,
they got
2.5 years of control for Carlson. He's a better player right now, but he's also about to be ARB eligible too, or he is ARB eligible, but he's ARB 1. Yeah. So, I mean, there's an argument about getting a prospect, even though he's probably not quite as good. So, I definitely would be on board with. I mean, I'd be on board with getting the prospect who hasn't started his clock yet if I was the Nationals. But
yeah, that makes some sense.
But yeah, sure. I mean, there is. I will say this: it's theoretically possible the Nationals, if they have breakouts from a couple of their young guys like James Wood and maybe Dylan Cruz figures it out and gets up to the big leagues and breaks out, like there's a legit world where the next 2.5 years they can be in contention. It's just. Right. I think that would prolong their window, even though this guy could be somebody that they could add for that time frame.
Yeah. Well, what a wild deadline season it has been. Yeah. I think we expected a lot of action. I think today we had got it the past few days. It looked a little slow today, and then about 30 minutes before the deadline, it just all kicked off from there. So this was a lot of fun. Shout out to all the people watching on X for the first time. You can start watching them live on there from now on too. We now have the ability to go from there. I think at one point we're up to like 111 viewers, so that's really, really cool. Be sure to follow our X account, follow our YouTube, so you can make sure you see us every week. We will be back next Monday at our normal time. to break down even some more, and we'll have some overreactions and stuff from that point. But anything else you guys want to wrap up on as, before we end this off?
I mean, I think we now know who's going to be on what team coming down the stretch of the season. So it's a big deal. You look at I think next week we could probably start talking about where contenders stand coming into the stretch run, and maybe give a winners and losers as the deadline type thing. Do a little bit more analysis than how we get the trades broken to us as we're talking and trying to scramble to figure out what's going on here. So I definitely enjoyed the live stream. So I'm glad we've kind of upgraded our platform a little bit over the last couple days with the X. So I think that hopefully that everyone enjoyed having that. So
awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see how it shakes out. The one thing I think we're learning, it's a little easier to trade for folks that are not on a long-term contract. I think that's the thing we've learned, right? Garrett Crochet didn't move. Robert didn't move, right? Blake Snell's got an option. He didn't move. A lot of those guys that were maybe movable did not go. So, there's a lot of prospects and currency and stuff like that spent on players with expiring contracts. And I wonder if that's a trend, because I think we'll see more controllable players move in the off season.
I do think it's a trend, because what'll happen is the teams, there's so many more playoff spots now with the extra wild cards that I think more teams believe next year we can contend with just a couple of pieces. So if you've got guys that are going to be around next year, you feel better about maybe being in contention than previously. Whereas, for a long time, if you had, if you were slightly below 500 and you didn't really have a ton of, you would just sell because you knew it was going to be a few years. So it's kind of a
for sure. It was really busy. I thought we expected to see some of the bigger guys go, but we'll see that towards the deadline, or not towards the off season. See if those moves, we can come back and say, hey, remember when we talked about this at the deadline? But anyways, just super busy. I know we've been on here for an hour and 42 minutes already, so hope you guys all enjoyed the live stream of this. If you're listening back on the podcast side, be sure to join us again as we probably do this moving forward from now on. Trying to do a deadline live stream or something to go along. But anyways, this has been a lot of fun. We're rambling on, so let's go ahead and get out of here. So thank you guys for tuning in to this episode, and we will catch you guys back here next Monday.